Raider Nation, what's going on? You're watching the Raiders Report. And coming up here on today's show, big roster changes are coming up. I'll tell you what I was told by a really reliable source. Clelin Ferrell, could that be the big-time move? You're going to have to wait to find out. And then at the very end of today's show, Josh McDaniels doesn't trust Derek Carr. Those are the words from Colin Cowherd. I'll break it all down for you. If you haven't already, hit that subscribe button. Where are my real ones at? If you're a real one, spam real one down below, because the longer and longer this season goes, I want to know who my loyal watchers are. I see people who are part of the Noti Gang. I see people who watch all of our watch parties that comment on all the crazy questions that I ask you to do. So one thing is this. Not only do I see it, I want to show some love to some of the loyal watchers out there. Man, huge shout out to Mr. Bagoat, Isaac Hernandez, the greatness of the Raiders, Jose Delgado, Brandon Jasper, locals, Brandon. I see you. I appreciate you. And if you're part of my family here at the Raiders Report, hit that sub button and spam real one down below. Let's now talk about some of these Raiders rumors. Big roster changes are coming. I'm going to give this one 2 just win babies. I'm going to say people are talking. As soon as the Raiders lost the game to the Rams, I went home. I'd ignored all my text messages, and then I woke up the next morning, and I saw a text message from one of my top sources that said big changes are going to happen. I don't know if he was talking about John Simpson getting cut, but then he messaged me again later in the week, and he said, well, hey, don't totally count this out. From what I understand is this. The coaching staff is unhappy with certain players. And I was also told that non-McDaniels guys should be on high alert, which realistically is nothing that we already don't know, correct? Anytime you bring in a brand new head coach, you bring in a brand new regime, all the players that were a part of that old regime should be absolutely put on high alert. And we've already seen what McDaniels and Ziegler have done. If you're not one of their guys, there is an opportunity, or a chance is probably the better word to say, that, let's face it, you might not be around for all that much longer. Now, one of the things that my source did tell me that I was rather surprised about, which surprised and yet not surprised, and I'll tell you here in just a second, but apparently the Raiders' decision makers believe it's a player issue and not a coaching issue. How does that feel? Let that sink in. I'm going to say it again. The decision makers for the Raiders believe it is a player issue, not a coaching issue. I was also told that that's why when Dave Ziegler was asked a few weeks ago, he said that McDaniels was doing a good job. I was also told that that's why Mark Davis came out and said, fantastic. He said that those guys are doing a fantastic job. So from what I understand, the decision makers have said the coaches are doing good. The players are the reason why we're 5-8. So you know what the Raiders Report's about. I can't wait to see what you guys have to say about this one. So I'm going to make the pinned comment on today's show. Who deserves more blame for the Raiders' 5-8 season right now? If it's the coaches, type coaches. If you believe it's the players, then I want you to spam players down below. If you don't know what it means to get hit with a YouTube ad break, it means when you scroll on down, a YouTube ad's going to play, and you might as well let it play. So let me know, coaches or players, who deserves more blame. When you're an adult, I always think that coaching is a problem, okay? I also think players also deserve a little bit of a problem here, right? However, I look back at that team last season. That team was not a playoff caliber team. They made it to the playoffs because they bonded as a unit. This team, they got better. So for that reason, it is more of a coaching problem than a player problem. That's my personal opinion. I'll also say that bad coaches and leaders, they point the finger at others. I couldn't believe the press conference that I heard from Josh McDaniels the day after the Raiders lost to the Rams. It blew my mind. But then realistically, when you think about it, a lot of the things that this coaching staff has said time and time again, it's not that surprising, is it? I mean, this is what McDaniels had to say when he was asked after, or in an interview, on why the Raiders decided to run press man coverage in the Rams game in that situation where there's 98 yards to go, less than 2 minutes. Why the hell are you running press man? Here's what he had to say. Yeah, multiple choices there, and we chose to at least get tight to him and try to make completing the ball a little bit harder. I don't think we did a great job of executing, being a top of the player the way that we would like to. Again, we can always look back at that and choose something else, and we play a softer zone and give them the opportunity to find somebody in space. Don't say it's the execution. McDaniels for weeks just says it's the execution. So essentially, if you really think about that quote, he's saying it wasn't a bad call, running press coverage in a situation where you got single high safety help, not even safety help on your side. That's not a bad call. If they would have executed it, it would have been better. Sure, if you would have executed it, it would have been better. But you also put an undrafted free agent in Sam Webb one-on-one on Van Jefferson with no safety help. That falls on the coaching. Execution deserves blame. But I got a lot more crazy quotes coming up here from Josh McDaniels that shows you that this guy is putting a lot of blame on the players, and they're not putting enough blame on themselves. Now, today's show sponsor, major shout-out to Fetch. If anybody out there likes to save money, I know I personally do, you can turn your old receipts and you can turn them into gift cards. How do you do it? Go to chatsports.com/fetch, and I just learned this. When you super chat, that actually also going to be linked up, and you can get bonus points on Fetch. I know, crazy world. Now, let me continue to tell you why I love Fetch, and shout out to them for sponsoring today's Raiders Report. Fetch is a super and easy-to-use and free app that lets you earn rewards and literally on anything that you buy. Scan any physical receipt or e-receipt, and you earn points for your purchases, and then process only takes seconds. You don't have to worry about the receipt from there or what is on it, so let me show you how simple it is. All you got to do is open up the Fetch app, press the orange camera button, and snap a photo of your receipt. Then hit submit, and you'll see the confetti popping, showing you that you've earned more rewards points. It's a simple process. You can also click the e-receipt function to get rewarded for your Amazon purchase or other online shopping by syncing your email account. You can then redeem those points for gift cards at Amazon, Starbucks, or any hundreds of retailers and restaurants available. Fetch is available on iPhone, and it is also available on Android. So all I want you guys to do is get rewarded for all the shopping that you're doing, especially during the holidays going on right now. Earn free rewards on everything you buy. All you got to do, and I put the link down in the comments. I was nice enough to put it in the description as well. 5,000 bonus points by going to chatsports.com/fetch. If you don't know what 5,000 bonus points means, it's essentially a $5 gift card. Free app. chatsports.com/fetch. Now, let's continue to show you how much of a clown Josh McDaniels is here, and he gets asked on whether or not he thought he was conservative in the second half of the game. Here was his response. When you look at the tape, there were opportunities to be made. I don't know how many times Derek Carr scrambled, but it had to be 4 or 5 at least, I think. On a number of those, we were attempting to get the ball down the field and had some opportunities on some of them to do that. So essentially all I heard there was, okay, McDaniels is blaming Derek Carr and he's blaming the offensive line. He doesn't believe that he went conservative. He doesn't think that they were calling the wrong plays. He's saying our offensive line didn't block that well. Hate to break it to you, our offensive line's been blocking pretty well. And, well, you only gave Derek Carr 7 opportunities in the second half to throw. Let's keep on rolling with the McDaniels pointing the finger at other people train. Again, on the conservative play calls in the second half. I've said it all year, and I won't stop saying it because it is the truth. It's not just calling a pass play or calling a deep shot. It's everything has to work together. The route has to be run properly. The read has to be made properly. The protection has to be done well. And then you have an opportunity to make the play. Just because somebody calls something, which there was a number of them called last night, doesn't mean that the ball is ultimately going to get fired down the field or we're going to have great success. All I want McDaniels to do, and I believe all good leaders, I believe this: take some responsibility. That's all I need you to do. You're the head coach. Just say, you know what, some of those calls, they weren't all that great. But this is what this man has done the entire season. He has sat up there and he neglects, or he points the other way, he deflects. And instead of saying, you know what, some of that is absolutely on me. I just haven't seen it this year. McDaniels is saying that he's calling the right plays and that the players can't execute. I watched you try to run a 3 at third down in one play where Josh Jacobs lined up as a fullback and you lined up Devontae Adams as a running back who plays wide receiver when Josh Jacobs has been the offensive player of the year. You're telling me that's the right play? I'm just going to respectfully disagree, and I'm just sick and tired of this dude saying that it's not his fault. He's pointing the finger the other way, but then that goes all the way back to the very first story when the sources are telling me that they believe that the coaching staff is doing the right thing, but the players are doing the wrong thing. What do I hear in that? I bet you McDaniels is telling them, yeah, it's not me. It's on those guys. And for that, I say shame on you because you're a team, and it's every single person's fault. Coming up next here on the Raiders Report, I got some cut candidates. And in terms of cut candidates, I was going to throw in a bunch of names, but then I figured, you know what? I might try to do it a little bit later on in the week. I got a weird week. I'm actually going to New York on Tuesday after our live show, so we got an earlier Tuesday live show, so keep that in mind, 1 p.m. Eastern time. And we're going to talk about the biggest cut candidate that there is. Before I get to him, the reason why we're talking about it is because the Raiders moved on from John Simpson. He got cut on Friday. The Raiders then ended up promoting Ronis Grasu from the practice squad to the active roster. Simpson played in 3 games. He started the first 2 weeks, but he got cut ultimately because, let's face it, he was the John Gruden guy, and we've seen if you're not a McDaniels guy, there's a good chance you're not going to end up on this team. So let's talk about the cut candidate. His name is Clelin Ferrell, and are the Raiders planning on moving on from the former number 4 overall pick in the 2019 draft? I got to give it to just win babies at this current moment. It's a coin flip to me. I wrote about this story. I guess I should say I talked about this story. I don't know how you can write on a video. And I said that a few weeks ago they can move on from Clee. And the reason why I brought it up is because same thing, had a source tell me, hey, they're probably going to move on from Jonathan Abram. They ended up moving on from Abram. And if you're going to move on from Abram, maybe that's also a decision to move on from Clee. So for that reason, it would not shock me that the Raiders decide to move on from Ferrell, especially after the, let's just call it what it is, boneheaded play on 3rd down and 4 when your team's up 16-3 in the 4th quarter, under 10 minutes to go. You don't need to block a punt. You try to block a punt anyway, and then you allow the Rams to go right down the field and score. That's a boneheaded play. I will say that one is a lack of execution. However, it still falls on the head coach's shoulder. You know why? Because you're the head coach. So what do you think here? Would you cut Clee? Y for yes or N for no? I can anticipate, I'm already going to look into my crystal balls here and say like 75% of you are going to say, yes, it is time to move on from Clelin Ferrell. And I 100% get your frustrations. But my honest-to-God take, which I always try to give here, is no. And the reason why I'm going to say no is because, clown face, the Raiders still have a chance to make the playoffs, and you need as much depth as you humanly possibly can on that defensive line if you want to try to compete. And whether you dislike Clee or not, he does offer you some depth at one of your biggest weaknesses right now. However, if anybody thinks that they know what's going on inside that man's mind, that little guy who probably should be riding a bike, Saul, that's what I might call him from now on, Coach McSaul, you moved on from Abram, you moved on from Leatherwood. Both of those were first-round picks. You just never know what can happen. Next thing, and this will be the final story that I talk about here on the Raiders Report. It's around Josh McDaniels not believing in Derek Carr. I like talking about news. I like doing watch parties. I love rumors. The other thing that I try to hit, though, is trending topics. And Colin Cowherd the other day was on the herd, and he just flat out said that he doesn't think that Josh McDaniels believes in Derek Carr. And I'll talk about that here in just a second. But always remember, you guys can interact with me on Twitter and Instagram. I'm at MitchellRenz365, literally anywhere. If you want to stay up to date on news, rumors, that's a great place to do it. Also, we do stuff over on Locals, which we do NFL Week Pick'em challenges. So shout out to everyone who's always participating in our Pick'em challenges. If you want to join in upcoming weeks, I encourage you to do so. Now, let's go to the final story here on the show. McDaniels doesn't trust Derek Carr. This one to me is for just win babies, believe it baby. I get that people like to talk. Hell, I talk up here all the time. But when I listen to McDaniels talk, I just feel like it goes in circles. Nobody ever really knows what McDaniels is saying. He just tries to really avoid the question without answering anything. It reminds me of a few politicians that have been recently up there at the stand. But that's what McDaniels does. He just talks in circles and circles and circles. The reason why I'm going to sit up here and say that I don't really think that he does believe in Derek Carr is the action. Look at the games. Cowherd said McDaniels doesn't trust Carr. Carr threw the ball 7 times in the second half versus the Rams. And he can say that he doesn't think that he gets conservative, but I would like to think that, and please let me know if I'm wrong, majority of Raider fans right now would say when the Raiders have a lead in the second half, McDaniels gets conservative and he doesn't try to put the ball in Derek Carr's hands. I mean, you're 0-4 when leading at halftime this season. That's pretty freaking mind-blowing. So what I figured I would do here is show you some stats. And I wanted to show you Carr's attempts by quarter. Well, so far, this kind of disproves the Carr not really believing in it stat, Mitch, because he threw the ball 103 times in the first quarter. He's thrown the ball 113 times in the second quarter. The quarter that feels like it's just a backstabber, Third quarter, 78 total attempts. That's kind of interesting to me. And then in the fourth quarter, 130. All right, very intriguing numbers there. I got a few more intriguing numbers to show you, but when you see that, how much do you trust Derek Carr? Game on the line type of stuff. Like, quarterbacks can be great in the first quarter, second quarter, third quarter. People don't care about the quarterback play early on in games. That's not what people talk about, right? I mean, let's face it. People talk about playoffs, Super Bowls, wins, end of the game type of stuff. How much do you trust Derek Carr? Scale it from 1 to 10. If the game's in overtime, I'm going to say 10. And a lot of people might laugh at that fact. Derek Carr, throughout his entire career, 9-1 in overtime. His only loss this season happened this year with McClown. Right now, though, the way that he's playing, I'm going to say it's a 5. And there's going to be a lot of people out there like, but Mitch, he played well last year. It's just Josh McDaniels. I don't even know if I could say that. I can legitimately look at the eyes of Raider Nation and say, since Derek got hurt back in 2016, you've had a very mediocre quarterback since then. Has he dealt with a lot? Yes. Bad free agency, bad trades, bad draft picks, bad coaches. He's dealt with it all. But realistically, when you're made the highest paid quarterback in the NFL, which he was at that time, you're paid that type of money because you're supposed to be able to overcome anything. And yet, the reason why I'm at a 5 right now is because maybe McDaniels shouldn't trust Carr. Right? I point the finger at McDaniels more than any person alive, and I am confident to say that. Hell, we started the hashtag #FireJoshMcDaniels, and it's trending on Twitter. But maybe Carr does deserve a little bit of blame here. Look at these numbers. In the first half this season compared to the second half. I mean, Derek Carr in the second half this season's got a 55.3% completion percentage. 8 touchdowns, 4 interceptions, a quarterback rating of 80.7. So that alone shows you when the game matters the most this season, Carr's a little bit short right now, right? Also, on top of first half, second half stats, Derek, throughout his entire career, has never been good in the red zone. He hasn't. It was one of the reasons why when the Raiders hired McDaniels, we all got excited because we thought, okay, finally, here's going to be the opportunity where Carr's better in the red zone. These are the worst red zone completion percentage, minimum of 20 attempts in the NFL. Derek is second worst, behind my mortal enemy, Joe Flacco. But then you got Mike White, Kenny Pickett, Davis Mills. Does anybody on here think that any of these quarterbacks are all that great? No, not really. But what about inside the 10-yard line? This is where it even gets worse. Derek Carr this season, inside of the 10-yard line, minimum of 20 attempts again, is bottom in the NFL in completion percentage with 31%. Then it's Matt Ryan, Kyler Murray, thought that was interesting with Jalen Hurts, and then Russell Wilson. I get that there's going to be a lot of blame, and there deserves to be blame on McDaniels, the coaching staff, but you do have to realize that Derek does deserve a little blame as well. So even though I don't think McDaniels trusts Derek Carr whatsoever, maybe there's a reason behind it, because this season, Derek in the red zone, statistically, you can make the argument, is the worst quarterback in the NFL. So who deserves more blame? You know I'm going to ask it to you. Josh McDaniels, or is it Derek Carr? Who deserves the blame for all of these struggles here? I will admit that both of these guys deserve equal the blame in my book. They do. And the reason why I'm going to say that both of these dudes deserve equal blame is because, do I think Josh McDaniels has been a disaster? Of course I do. But then you also have to look at the past. And Derek has always been bad in the red zone in the past. Has he gotten a few good games together? Yes. But he's also been super inconsistent. I hope that the Raiders can do something that nobody's given them a chance to do, and that's win their final 4 games. You win your final 4 games, you go 9-8, you make the playoffs, people forget about all the talk. People forget about all the distractions. It's just like what I said about the fourth quarter stat. If you are bad in the beginning of the year, but you turn it on at the end of the year and you win some games, you make it to the playoffs, everyone forgets it. And I am hoping after this season, we forget of all the drama, all the disastrous, all the blown losses, because you did it last year. You won 4 games in a row. So there is a little bit of part of me that I have some faith that the Raiders can do it again this season.